No. Those were individual mistakes that those individuals are responsible for. Not a culture issue. Yeah, it was, a mistake that, everybody's aware of. I understand, why that can't happen. It was, I've talked to coaches about it, talked to GMs, apologized to my family. That's who I, felt worse about. Felt like I let them down because no matter where I go now, and even without all this, I've got an obligation. I'm the fourth. Can't do that if your last name's Bennett, and I know better.
Stetson, looking back on the team regret not going to the Senior Bowl, and our team's asking specifically about that.
I never, the senior, it was more so the Shrine Bowl. It wasn't really the Senior Bowl. I really wanted to play in it. There was a lot going on at the moment. I discussed with people that were close to me, asked advice, decided, that it was that I needed to go train. I needed to get better, but I do wish, that I could have, but just ultimately decided that the other was the better choice.
What did you work on at the QB country when you were in Texas? What were some of the drills? We saw some video of them. What were some of the things you were focused on there?
Footwork, throwing specific throws that we're going to be asked to throw here at the combine, stuff like that.
So what was the message you wanted to say to the football teams? You don't know you personally, the kind of person you are, the kind of person that you'd be on their team?
Yeah, no, I just try to be honest. I feel like, I don't put a lot of myself out there on purpose. And so the stuff that people do get of me, they run with, and they try to read into it instead of just seeing what it is. And so I tried to, just be honest with them, just like I try to be honest with you guys every single time I'm up here. And so that's what I'll continue to try to do.
Stetson, what's it like to be back in Indy where y'all won the first championship? And have you had a chance to interact with the other Georgia guys here?
Yeah, we've thought it was pretty cool. Walked in there. I love the stadium. I think the stadium's awesome. With the, I think it, just looks like the city. So you remember that. I think the turf feels a little different than it did. It's definitely warmer. It was freezing. But yeah, it was special just walking in here. You don't think. I don't know. You just remember certain things, certain plays. Like a fumble that might have happened. But it was pretty cool. We worked hard for 3 years under Coach Monk, and I think it was a culmination of all that stuff, and I think we just let it all out.
Stetson, can you talk about what you do at the line of scrimmage in terms of flying the jet and moving players, protections, play calls?
Yeah.
What goes on up front?
Yeah, Coach Monk asked me, to be able to do a lot, and handled a lot, but. You got protections, you got motions, you got formations. Trying to figure out how to not get hit. And when you get hit a lot, which I didn't, but when you don't want to get hit, you figure out protections pretty quickly. So.
Does that help you? Do you think with the NFL transition, when you're talking with these coaches and stuff, having you go up on the whiteboard and draw a lot of this stuff out and seeing that NFL?
Yeah, I feel like Coach Monk helped me out so much with that. It is the same game. There are, obviously, a million things to work on. But as far as protections and scheme and stuff, I think at the very least, Coach Monk helped me have a foundation of knowledge that I can apply to the next system that I'm asked to do it in.
Stetson, what role did Mike Bobo have with you and the quarterbacks, and what do you think the future looks like for this Georgia offense?
I didn't really interact with Coach Bobo. I think he helped with some stuff upstairs, but I didn't really interact with him. I love him as a person, but as far as coaching and stuff like that, I didn't really talk to him. Reds down the street hooked me up. But I've got confidence in my abilities. Everybody asks that question, but there's so much more to playing quarterback than like people know. It's not, there's different offenses, different checks, different motions, whatever you're asked to do, that's all you can do in the offense, right? And then you have your physical ability, and a lot of people have physical ability, right? But I think that especially in the quarterback position, the mental acuity and how you can handle certain situations, and you can't really measure that. So I have confidence in my ability, but also all these dudes are hella players too. Drills, I hope to run fast and jump high, throw it well. I think I can try to, translate everything that I did at the college level, skill-wise, to, try to make it, better so it can apply here, because this is the ultimate league. Haven't ran a full one yet. Been working on speed and starts. I don't want to set expectations. We'll see what it is.
What was it like going up against Jalen Carter in practice?
We had some studs on the O-line, and Jalen's a nice guy. He didn't want to hurt me, so but it helped immensely, because when you're blocking him, right, nobody else is really going to be better. So. People are entitled to their opinion. But, yeah, I saw it as a parade for us who won, and I was playing music for Sed and Chris and trying to have a good time, and, people took it as I don't really know what people took it, but they didn't like it. And so, I'm sorry about that, but strictly just saw it as, a chance for me and Sed, and Chris to be, one last trip down Lumpkin on the way to Stanford together, and I just wanted to play the best tunes that we could at that moment.
A lot of the guys play unknown that really worked well for you.
Cross was always a good one. There's a lot of options. Yeah, that was probably good.
Nolan was here a couple days ago. The theme this week is memories of friendship with him.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not much to say about that. Yeah, met with them. I thought it went pretty well. They asked me some questions, wondering about, the incident. Answered them. Asked me about football. Asked me about life, tried to figure out who I was. It was, I thought it went well.
Stetson, you told us at the SEC Media Days that the critics really don't drive you, because if you rely on critics, then what pushes you when you're doing well. So where does the drive come from? Because I think that part of the story somehow gets twisted sometimes, that you're all about proving people wrong, and you said Birmingham or Atlanta, that's really not.
Yeah, no, the way I see it is, that's just what you only get one of these, man. Lives. I'm playing football right now, and so I'm going to try to do it to the best of my ability. And that doesn't mean, try really hard. That means figure out, is this the right area to try hard at, right? Or is this one? What's the best area? Figure it out, and then give 1,000% there, because, what else are we going to do, Yeah, 1,000%. I think, once you're in that situation, you know what the situation is. You understand everything that comes with it. You can handle it. You know how to prepare. And I think it definitely, for me, it was always the unknown. Like, what is this champion? And now, like, it's a game, and you got to play well in it. And all the lights in the world don't matter if you don't win, right? And so, just win the game.
Stetson's always been really good in the clutch and in the spotlight. Some of the NFL chatter is, what happens if he's not the starter? What kind of backup could Stetson be if that's his role? And what are your thoughts about how you would go about that? Because it's been a minute since you haven't been in the spotlight like that.
Yeah, well, as far as my job, my obligation is to the team that I'm drafted to be the best player for that, to learn to play football, and at the end of the day, I've never been a wave calls or anything like that. I keep my head down. I play ball, and so whatever's asked of me is asked of me. My job when I get there, regardless, you got to be the best player to play. And I know there's more to that, probably here, but at the end of the day, that's all you can control. So that's what I'll do. Thanks, guys.